good to go?
Let's do it. Party time.
All right. I want to start off by. So I have some book selection questions.
These are tough. These are tough ones.
In your selection, what is the number one book on mindset, on framing mindset?
Without a doubt, the book is called How to Be Rich, but it's really about living a fuller life. It's about infinite and divine supply. It's about operating with a spirit of going the extra mile. It's about dealing with adversity, how to sort of view adversity. But it's by far the best book I've ever read. I probably read it 50 or 60 times, I'd say, and it's the book I have framed in my office. That was the original one I bought, in 2008, I think. There was a wild story. I think I might have told you guys one time, but there used to be a bookstore similar to Barnes & Noble called Borders Books, and they were going out of business. So in the going out of business sale, I just popped in there one day with Tracy one night, and I was really into reading at the time. I mean, I was reading basically all day long, and I ended up going in and was looking at kind of in the business section, self-development section, which was all kind of jumbled together. It was a mess, but I can literally see it right now as I'm speaking to you. And I grabbed a whole bunch of books, and there's this one book right next to Think and Grow Rich and Master Key to Riches and Art of Persuasion, all these old Napoleon Hill books. And there was this one book that stuck out. It's called How to Be Rich. And honestly, I felt like kind of a weirdo pulling that book out because there's people all around me. And I'm like, How to Be Rich? Because it says a couple things if you pull that book off the shelf. It says, it challenges your confidence because if you're grabbing that book, you might not be rich. You follow what I'm saying? You're grabbing it because you're not rich, so you have to have that ability to publicly state that by grabbing the book, right? The other thought is all I care about is money. So I grab a book called How to Be Rich. But the title of the book really, I think, just grabbed attention because it's a compilation of all the best mindset writers of all time. It's the best work from the best mindset writers. And that book absolutely changed my life, and it's the book that I've given away most to people.
Next book selection is Understanding Actually the Game of Real Estate.
Good question as well. So I wouldn't really recommend any book on understanding the game of real estate. However, I found some very light reading. The first book I read that kind of taught me the game, ironically, was from a guy who was an investor in Brockton here in Massachusetts. And the book was called Multifamily Millions. And it was really digestible for a guy who had no idea what he was doing, had no idea the terminology, and had no clue if what I was doing was right. And this book sort of described this guy's kind of rise through the city of Brockton and then through some other cities in the U.S. and basically talked about pulling money off their credit cards, cash advances, to put down on properties for the down payments and borrowing from hard money lenders and raising money from mom and dad and family and all that other stuff, as well as banks. It talked about how to present to banks. It talks about how to deal with tenants' trash and toilets. It talked about building systems around owning 2 and 3 families, and it was just it was ordained that book made its way into my life. That was number one, and it was just one of those books I couldn't put it down. I actually enjoyed the time, a lot of the time that I spent reading it, and I read all that guy's books. The other one that I read was actually from Donald Trump's lawyer. So Donald Trump had a lawyer, I think his name was George Ross. Yeah, pretty sure it was George Ross. And he wrote a book about how Donald Trump thought about real estate. And again, it was light enough, but gave me enough information to kind of verify that I was headed down the right path with the way I was thinking about things. And it very much affected the way that after we bought the first 2 family that we bought in Brockton, kind of post market crash circa 2008, it actually laid out kind of exactly the strategy we put in place in order to get the highest rents from those 2 units, which we did at the time. We actually, in these 2 units in Market Street, had the highest rents for any 3 bedrooms in Brockton, Massachusetts. That was in 2009, 2010 by the time we tenanted it. Yeah, true story. But that was driven right from there. But those 2 things is more when you're on the path, when you read a book, it's there's There's very few technical strategies I think that you'll ever pull from books that you'll apply in your life. It was really just guideposts making sure you're on the right path. And when you do say, should I just pull money off a credit card? It makes you realize that that's okay to do in that context. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not like okay, step 1, pull money from your credit cards. Step 2, tip your mom's purse upside down. Step 3, take over a building and throw people out. Like, that's not the prescription. It's just these generalized approaches to kind of, again, help make sure and verify that you're on the right path. And that's all I ever needed, kind of as I was reading books, was just like, when I was in an uncharted territory, it's nice to read a book and help you feel like, damn, I'm on the right path. And that's what those books did for me. Is Jake still, is he? Wonder if he's all right.
Is he texting you still?
No, he's just been in that restaurant longer than Sean McNicholas, on Shawarma Day. All right, anyway, so what is the best book? Hey, Jake, come on through.
Hey, guys.
You know what I said? I thought it was a funny joke.
What?
I said Jake's been in there longer than Sean McNicholas on Shawarma Day.
I was on the phone with Manny.
Oh,
Or you don't just have to say that you're fine when you're not.
nice.
In your opinion, what is the number one book on controlling emotions in the business field or in your lifestyle?
Gotcha. Yeah, also an interesting one. I think they go hand in hand, right? Because if you're truly trying to be entrepreneurial, like I would encourage you guys to be, this is an intrapreneurial organization where people with entrepreneurial tendencies can come and sort of learn about how to be an entrepreneur inside of an organization, which I think is pretty rare. Like, you don't see that a lot. Everybody's typically, encapsulated into these fixed roles with fixed due dates and everything else. But here is pretty much a sort of an open forum for your creativity, which is really what I think entrepreneurism is in a way, is like the business expression of a person's internal creativity. But that being said, I think there's a lot of books I've read about controlling emotion. I think, go with the one of the most underrated business books of all time is the Bible. If you watch how Jesus controlled emotion in some of the hardest times and what the result was, right? I think that's pretty incredible. In How to Be Rich, there's a whole section on, it's called spiritual meditation. And it has a whole bunch of different ways of why it's important. So I would say, I think it's the 5th section of How to Be Rich is really all about that. It talks about Buddhism and really some of the teachings of Buddha more than Buddhism. I've watched a lot and read a book called Living Buddha, Living Christ with Thich Nhat Hanh, who's an incredibly peaceful individual. A book called The Tao Te Ching is also another great sort of, what do they call it, Eastern philosophy book on how important it is to come to peace. And then just, as you kind of learn about these little techniques and tactics for sort of winding down, you realize that like being in a peaceful place yields far greater fruit than decisions made with any level of animosity behind them. Animosity tends to fall into the same category as like jealousy, envy, rage. Like they're all kind of in that same category. And even though you might win a fight and knock someone down or knock somebody out, you ultimately lose in the long run. There's another book called, it's by Deepak Chopra. It's kind of like his main ones. It's like six spiritual meditations or the 6 keys to spirituality or something like that. It's another great book. Also on controlling your emotional state. Again, I think they're linked, personal and professional. I think controlling your emotions in general and being able to manage your emotions, nobody in the world is better than Tony Robbins. I think there's a big push nowadays with entrepreneurs to be or to study what's known as like Stoic philosophy. So you've got things like Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. You've got guys like Tim Ferriss and Ryan Holiday. Ryan Holiday wrote a book called The Obstacle is the Way. And it's really about, you realizing deeply that you have absolutely zero control out of anything that happens around you, what anybody does or thinks, but you retain 100% control over how you react to it. That's a Stoic philosophy. Therefore, you remain relatively unmoved by outside circumstances and outside events.
And one more book revolving budgeting / financial skills.
Geez, I think I would say that, I mean, overall, like, I think Tony Robbins and Grant Cardone both speak about money very practically, better than anybody else. So as far as a book is concerned, I never read 10X. I never read the full Money Master the Game from Tony Robbins. But I would say that anything those two guys are teaching, to me, is like, bueno, you know? Other than that, I just sort of learned, you know, developed sort of this financial IQ by doing. Charging up a credit card too high, being petrified to make the payment, and then learning how to pay it down. You know what I mean? So I'd say, you know, I don't know, just go max out your credit card and figure out how to pay it off. You know, that type of thing. That's how I would say that I generally learned from it. But nothing directly about budgeting from books that I can remember. Certainly not college.
I definitely agree with you there. Yeah.
Certainly not college. Hold on, my dad texts me. Hold on.
Take a swing.
Let's
So,
go.
hold on.
Yes. He's
She does.
But the question I have kind of jumps off what you were talking about.
We are all gonna pop by the house. Okay. And then, cool.
So, kind of jumping off of what he was talking about, like emotions and stuff like that. I've seen you use a lot the word like insecurity, a lot around at the office and stuff.
Huh.
It's like whether it be like a client or
Sure.
So, have you ever felt insecure in business? Like, can you remember a time when you felt that?
Sure.
And like, what tips would you have, sort of, to kind of ground yourself and overcome that other people would probably adopt too?
Geez, what a great one. I would say that insecurity and the ego, right? They go hand in hand. I would say those are the number one things that get people tripped up and sort of sacrifice their own success, is their ego or insecurity, because it causes them to act and react to things that warrant no reaction, right? That's what insecurity does. And I think that people are insecure because of, you know, kind of how they grew up, how they're being marketed to, you know, what this person has and this one doesn't. And I think it just breeds insecurity. But that insecurity, again, causes people to make very short-term decisions, which never allows them to be successful. And that's why they end up, you know, dying poor and angry, really, you know? I think insecurity is at the root of all that stuff. So the more comfortable you can get at realizing you're insecure, you might be insecure over money, might be insecure over your looks, might be insecure over weight, might be insecure over the way you speak, might be insecure because you're around successful people and you're not quite successful yet. You might wonder what everybody's bank account says. All that stuff breeds nothing positive. So eradicating that, I think, is important. What was the second part of the question?
What are your tips to kind of overcome that so that people?
Oh, have I ever felt that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think I felt that way the whole time. I occasionally feel that way about, you know, my hair's falling out as I'm getting older. You get insecure about that. If I'm not in the sun or don't, you know, go tanning here and there, get insecure about paleness. My ears are stuck out since I was a kid, got made fun of it, was insecure about that. When I was vegan, I got real thin and looked a little emaciated, was insecure about that. I've been in rooms where, especially as a younger person, I thought people were far more successful than me, and it took me a very long time to realize when I'm in a conference room, you know, 90% of what's going on is bullshit. But I always had such a curious mindset that I would be in these rooms and conference rooms and everything else, being okay, being insecure, thinking everybody was, you know, more successful than me. I could then debrief and then work on myself. So to me, it usually led to positivity. I would say in relationships, I was incredibly insecure. I still get insecure sometimes. In my relationship, what was she doing? What does she really think? Right? It just happens. So how do you overcome it? Is you go back to those books, right? And you got to have this deep desire for personal development, and you got to realize that all of those qualities, they just don't serve you, right? They just don't serve you. There's nothing positive that's ever come from insecurity, which didn't like ultimately result in explosive behavior at times, right? feeling inadequate or insecure. Cost me a relationship when I was in college. There were numerous challenges I had with insecurity when Tracy and I first got together. And then, like I said, my current relationship. And again, overcoming it is more this sort of realization that, a majority of what you see, especially on Instagram and all that stuff, a majority of it's so not true that comparing yourself to it's a little silly. And then you've been given a body, you've been given a mind, you've been given looks, you've been given a gift to, earn money and provide. And those, to me, are from God, and that there's strength I've been given from my race, not yours or yours, my race. And everything I need to fulfill that destiny is already inside of me. And I sometimes have to remind myself of that. It's not like I don't wake up every day and say that. You know what? God has given me all the power I need for today. Right? You can say it, but you might not believe it. You know what I mean? Right? So what's the point? But sometimes you got to say it enough to believe it. At my core, I believe it. Sure.
Alex is literally been waiting.
Oh, Alex, you can come in, guy.
I thought you were filming.
Yeah, we are.
We like a good interruption. It's like a cameo.
Sweet.
Geez, good questions.
That was that one. The next ones I have kind of go off to different topics. So I don't know if you have anything that's still related to that.
It's just the next one you're done.
You guys are loaded with good questions, man. It's real freaky.
Got a plot. Well, we gotta think about it. Yeah, sure. You can go first if you want.
All right. So if you're 20 years old, again,
Mhm.
knowing everything you know in business now, how would you go about getting or obtaining your first rental property?
Great question. I would surround myself with a bunch of people who know how to get rental properties and want me to succeed. Ding, 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 you did it. Ding, 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 you did it. But technically, how would I do it? I think one of the good things about me is when I first started looking at rental properties, I was actually a little bit scared, or insecure. But I was scared, and I think it caused me to overanalyze each property I looked at, which caused me to keep looking at properties. So the story of how I bought my first rental property, or I should say how we bought our first rental property, was I knew there was an opportunity in the market. I'd heard it. It was undeniable, and I felt like it was something I wanted to do. I read Multifamily Millions, and I was like, dude, it's what I need to do. The first book I picked up on learning how to invest in multifamilies was written by a guy who's from Brockton. You can't make that up. So we started looking for houses, and before we actually put an offer in on one, I tortured this poor realtor, Renee Anastas, who was from Quincy, and dated a guy, I think ultimately married him, who was like a construction guy in Brockton. And we looked at 41 foreclosed properties before we made an offer on one. 41. So I looked at it and I said, geez, I really wanted to do it. So every single Saturday and some weekdays after work, I was looking at foreclosed properties. Heroin needles, shit. I mean, you name it. These buildings were torn up. People living in them, disgusting mattresses, crack houses, and through it all. Ended up getting a gun so I could go through with a weapon. Dude, it's crazy. But I looked at 41 properties. So anybody who says, oh, I don't know where to find properties, I looked at this one and I think it's a good deal. It's like, how many did you look at? 2. Made an offer on this one. 41 before I made an offer on one. But that was also, to me, looking back at 26 years old, that was an indicator that I actually gave a shit and I intended to pay the money I borrowed back and do the property right. Because I looked at 41 because I was petrified. How am I going to make the mortgage payment? How am I going to come up with the down payment? All those things that go through your head. But once I did that, and once I was like midway through looking, I then called and met with no less than 15 different people who were further along in life than me. I sat down and said, hey, this is what I want to do. What do you think? And I got everybody's opinion. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But for me, everybody was pretty much like, yeah, like that's a business. It's called being a landlord. And I said, okay, all right, that's fair. Read Multifamily Millions, look at 41 properties and say, all right, this one's on the market for 128. I'm going to offer 120. And we ended up getting it, I think, for 123. And then I went to the bank and a mortgage broker and another mortgage broker and another mortgage broker had people tell me, I don't think you qualify. I had all that shit happen to me, and ended up basically the way we bought that property was, okay, we looked at 41, bought number 42, went to Northeastern Savings Bank where we knew the chief lending officer, and he said, all right, I can lend you $110,000 towards it. You got to come up with $13,000 down payment plus all your closing costs, another 10. You need $23,000. I had zero. Ryan Norton, my partner at the time, had zero. So we said, what can you do? He said, well, you got good credit. I'll give you a $15,000 credit line. You got to go find the other 12 on your own. And that's what happened. We borrowed $12,000 from Ryan Norton's mom, $15,000 from the bank in the form of a unsecured credit line. That's how we bought the first property with an actual bank mortgage. That was before I knew anything about hard money. So how would I do it? I would talk to everybody who lends money. I would look at a ton of properties. And then at that point, I would have a data set for what made sense. And that's what we do today. When I went to Florida, when I went to Dallas, and I didn't know anything, went through street by street. You just pick up data. So then when you look at something that looks like an opportunity, you can tell if it makes sense or doesn't make sense like pretty quickly. And then you talk to banks, hard money lenders, and you have another data set. You can really hone in on like rate and term, property values by looking at a ton of data. And I think ultimately at 26 years old, that was it. I had a ton of data on properties. This one's 80, this one's 90, this one's 110. There's a good street, bad street, shitty street, great street. And then all that data goes into the brain, and then you can just pick up sort of pattern recognition and figure out, okay, this one's good at 123. We'll take it. You know what I mean? But that's physical. I physically went to these places, physically met people, physically walked in those houses, not just like online.
Good. So, kind of going off of that.
Mhm.
So, this is kind of more specific to
Sure.
a situation that I've recently come into.
Sure.
I even asked Tommy yesterday his opinion.
Mhm.
So, how would you go about evaluating a property with no comps?
Mm.
Would you even bother looking at it?
Well, the first thing I would say is, why is there no comps, right? Because that's...
Well, this specific property that
Mhm.
I'm telling you about is like a hostel in Harvard,
Mhm.
and it's mainly, it's like it's a 9,000 square foot property
Mhm.
with 14 acres
In Harvard, Mass.
in Harvard.
Where is that?
It's like not 100% sure. I think it's north. But it's like kind of like farmlands,
Mhm.
and so people don't really sell there.
Mhm.
And that's pretty much most of the information I have.
So one, if you want to buy the property, I would definitely know where it is geographically. I'll start with that. But as far as how would I evaluate that, the first thing I think about when there's no comps, the first thing, and it's not the only thing, and it's not necessarily the truth. First thing I think about, there's no comps because it's not marketable. Harvard, farmland, hostel. Well, who's renting in Harvard, Mass? Right? If it's farmland, probably no one. Right? So you don't have, just from the quick data you gave me,
I can
okay.
give you more information if it helps.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
So this place, we've used it in the past.
Okay.
The church has used it in the
Sure.
past for retreats. And so the church would use it for retreats, but then also people have used it for like wedding venues.
Got it, okay.
Or other churches for retreats or other.
What did you pay for the retreat? Do you remember?
I think it was like 120 or 180 per person.
Okay, and how many people did you have?
Anywhere between 80 or 120 people.
Okay, and is it overnight?
Yeah, so Friday night we arrive, Sunday morning we leave.
So then it is, so say it's 100 people at $80 each, right? It's $8,000, right? For 3 days. How many times will you rent that per year?
Well, just my church would go about 4 or 5 times.
4 times per year? So you would be responsible for, and would your church keep doing that?
Yeah, but the ideal thing would also be to like find other places.
But let's just look at what we know, right? Not what we can speculate.
Yeah.
So what we know is that your church is worth $32,000 a year to that property. Okay, right? What do they want to sell it for?
I think it's like 2.2.
Okay. So doing the math, So 2.2 million. Would you put a down payment down
Me personally,
with the church or whoever buys it?
no idea.
Okay.
I don't make the decisions. I'm just wondering, like, because I'm looking at it. So.
Yeah, well, I'm teaching you how to look at it. Probably have to put 20% down. It's 400 grand, right? Say it's 400. So you'd be borrowing 1.8, and that mortgage payment on 1.8 would probably be, say, 18,000. Okay, so you guys as a church would be responsible, or you could bank on cash flow 32,000. That covers 2 of your mortgage payments, right? I imagine the taxes are very low out there, and if you're a church owner, I don't think you pay any.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have some of that status. So that's 2 months worth. So in my head, I'm saying, can we get 5 other churches to do the same thing we do? And that would be my barometer, because that's how you'd make the mortgage payment all year. If you get 5, you get yourself plus 5, that equals basically the annual mortgage payment. And then I'd make my decision from there.
Okay.
If I think I couldn't get 5, then I'd probably say, it's going to be tight. And that's just to break even on the mortgage. I'm sure there's other operating expenses when you're running a venue like that, which I would want to be prepared for. So how would I evaluate it? To me, not knowing much more info, not knowing how many events they do a year, to me, it's a little bit undesirable.
I
But-
meant, like, the value of the property.
All cash flow. Yeah. So you'd have to figure out what the cash flow is. So for you guys to buy it, that would be one evaluation. The other evaluation is to say, okay, we'd love to pay 2.2. Can you send us who rented it last year? Send us send us the profit and loss statements. And then you'd be able to evaluate the profit and loss statements. You know what your mortgage would be if you borrowed 1.8, and you can do the math from there. Really just got to dial in everything I've ever bought. Does the cash flow at least pay the mortgage on day one? If the answer is yes, I feel good about it. If the answer is no, and I don't love the property or I don't think there's a big upside, it's tough to move. But does the in-place cash flow pay the mortgage payment? That's like my number one. Good?
Yeah.
Okay.
One more.
Mm-hmm.
Ready?
Yep.
Describe Conquest in one word.
I mean, dynamic is what I say now. Entrepreneurial would be another one. Rugged is another one. Underdog would be another one. Overall savage would be another one. Savage tendencies, maybe. Fun would be another one. Unique would be another one. So any of those, I'd say. No boring ones. Everyone's like, honor, integrity, loyalty, Rare. We stand for integrity. It's like, that's a prerequisite of opening the fucking door. Like, don't give me that shit, Integrity. Sorry. And anybody who tells me that, I know they're not using integrity to run their company.
Oh,
Side note, yeah.
yeah.
We stand for integrity.
By working with all your employees.
Got it. Yeah.
So, in the video that I'm editing right now, which would probably be the previous video,
The one from the house?
the video,
Yeah.
video call.
Yeah, from the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in there, you talk about staffing up or how you needed to staff up in order to kind of scale the business before even profits came in.
Sure.
What are the steps that you remember taking or that you would take in order to learn about staffing up? Like, would you meet with a lawyer, a CPA? Like, what's kind of like, the steps?
I mean, this is going to sound a little bit, a little potentially arrogant, but like CPAs and lawyers aren't rich, so I do not seek their advice. Ever, period. Right? They'll get you in a damn rabbit hole. They'll give you enough information not to do the thing you want to do. They are entrepreneur stiflers, so I would never seek advice from them. I would seek, once I've decided to move forward, I would seek legal guidance and protection, but never advice. So that's that. I don't remember the context of what you asked on the video thing though.
So Justin was asking about how developers make money, and you were saying that developing is actually the slowest way that people
Oh yeah.
because of how much you have to put into it before
Yeah.
you get anything.
It's all cash outflow before there is any inflow.
Yeah, and then one of the statements he said is that you also have to staff up once you get more than what you can handle in terms of dealing
Gotcha.
and managing and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, got you.
So then that's why my question was, so what are sort of the steps that you take when you made the decision, all right, we got to staff up, like, all right, what do? Do we just get an office? And
Gotcha.
hire
Gotcha.
people
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
street, or-
Yeah, we've never been all that. We've been proactive about it lately, over the past year because of really Jake. But prior to that, we were not very proactive about it. We just sort of reached a point where we look around and we're like, she's burnt out, he's burnt out, they're burnt out. I wonder if it's because everybody's doing the work of 5 people. Got it. We should staff up, right? And then we put out an ad through Indeed or something. On LinkedIn, we put out ads. Like, that stuff never really worked out well for us. We've hired recruiters. That never really worked for us. The way that we've most successfully staffed up is just organic. He talks to him. He reaches out to me because Derek reaches out to him. You're over there. We see you, like you. We ask you. Jake knows people from his hometown, or somebody knows somebody from their hometown, and say, this is a cool place to work. Like, there's opportunity. You can learn. You can do this. Blah 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 blah. And it grows that way. That's what's been the best for us. But I didn't realize it when I was younger. I didn't realize like how to do it and how important it was to have like an organic kind of influence, which is what he's really brought to the table. And what you guys will bring to the table, I would think, because you guys are here. Hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully you're learning. And then you want to bring other people into the fold who think like you. That's how you end up with a lot of people who have generally the same thought process and approach to business and life, and a humbleness and a desire to learn.
Awesome.
Cool.
Good. Yeah. Do you have another one?
No.
So then, kind of like the last one then, just going off of that, what would you say is the top qualities that you look for when hiring somebody, or even just in a leader? Like, for example, if Jake's a leader, Tommy, they're all leaders, so what qualities do you see in them that you would
Yeah, they're young people too, young leaders. He's 23, they're 29 and 31 respectively. I think to answer the question on staffing, it's the number one quality is humility, followed by curiosity. Those are my 2 number ones now. Anybody who loses humility and loses curiosity tells me they think they know things and they no longer need to learn. So they're just going to do what they're going to do, irrespective of what the company's doing, irrespective of, my guidance or advice, who's been down every path like 3 times. Like there's nobody, I think, or very few people who are younger or here that have just stepped in as many landmines as me. So the least everybody can let me do is kind of like guide and nudge and guide and nudge and then sometimes push, but guide and nudge the whole way. So there might be a day, and I tell Jake this all the time, there might be a day when you catch me slipping and I'm not learning anymore. We're not growing. I'm stopping working out. I'm stopping reading. I'm stopping my podcasts, right? I'm stopping biohacks. I'm stopping all this stuff. And then maybe I shouldn't really be listened to anymore, Or, I can quit and I can get a call from you guys when you run into trouble. But right now I'm trying to prevent everybody from running into trouble. I'm trying to teach everybody how to run their own division of the organization really well. And the only things I need is humility and curiosity. And if those things aren't present, I don't care. I mean, we've had people in this office who, off the cuff, maybe we didn't think were all that intelligent, who come in here with humbleness, and they come in here with curiosity, and they'll dominate anybody who's smarter. That's what I think.
Awesome. Yeah. And then probably just the leadership thing, same qualities.
Yeah, leadership's interesting. and we were talking about this last night, there's two ways that I look at leadership. One is leadership through positional power, which is I'm your boss, do what I say. The other one is leadership through influence. And one of the things we were working on, Jake and myself, were that in the office, it's my observation that he's been doing a little too much with positional power, which means, hey, I'm the boss, this is how you should do this, right? It comes with a little nose up kind of shit. But the way that he has been able to recruit everybody and bring home Justin and bring you from over there and, you know, bring in Jamie and Plutarco, that was actually with influence. People saw the way he lived his life, what he was doing on Instagram, which is all true, by the way, and the way that he talked to them and explained the company and explained what we were about, and he gained influence with them. That's true leadership. So to the extent that people in this office can harness that leadership ability, which is influence, that's where sky's the limit. People who try to start asserting and inserting themselves with their title, which is positional power, are the weakest form of leaders that are out there. And I like to think everybody that we have, for the most part, checks themselves if they're in positional power state and starts to move back over to influence. And it comes by, you remember that Jesus guy?
Vaguely.
Yeah. So Jesus did what with his disciples? Wash their feet. Of service. The greatest leaders are the best servants. That's what develops influence. That's why I bring everybody out, bring everybody to dinner, bring people to Florida, bring people around, give people opportunity. Like that, to me, is like I think what a leader should be and should do. Cool?
Word. Good. Yeah.
Good one. Yeah, great questions, guys. You guys are relentless.